We're going to talk some NFL free agency before we get to the NBA. And we're going to do a little game that we did when we had our coaches, segment that we did where we match a coach to a particular team and explain why we were matching them. And we're going to do the same thing with these free agents, right? They need a home, right? They need a team. They need to get their money, and the team needs a player to improve, okay? And that's exactly what we're going to do right now. And Zach, I want to keep it here in Chicago with Justin Fields. Even though he's technically not a free agent, we believe that he's going to be traded after these free agents sign. So I want to kind of get your thoughts on what team should trade for Justin Fields.
Okay, well, I'm going to throw out an idea, and I haven't really heard a ton of people bring this up yet in terms of Justin Fields' next team, and I'm curious what you think about it. And it's funny, too, because this team has a first-year head coach, and if they would have had their old coach, I would have been even more confident that this team would have done this idea and traded for Justin Fields. But I don't think the Patriots should draft a quarterback with the number 3 pick. I think if they were to do that, they would be setting him up to fail because Bill Belichick, he left things in that roster in such a bad spot that I don't think, like, whether it's Jaden Daniels, Drake May, like, I don't think whoever they draft is going to work out there if that's what they decide to do, if they decide to draft a quarterback with the number 3 pick. So I would trade back if I'm New England and just collect as many assets as possible, try to rebuild that roster. And I would take a flyer on Justin Fields. He's not going to cost that much. I think if you draft a wide receiver with one of those picks you get back in the first round, they have some cap space to spend in free agency. I think this is a nice, low-risk, high-reward move for the Patriots. And I would feel even more confident in their ability to do that if Bill Belichick was still their coach. Like, I think this is a move that had Bill Belichick's name written all over it, like a classic buy low. But I just don't know what Jared Mayo, like, what his plan is. Is he just going to be simple and draft a quarterback with the number 3 pick? Again, I don't think they should do that. I think they would be setting him up to fail if that were the move. And I just think when you look at this roster, they really have to pick up the garbage off the floor from the Belichick era and really start rebuilding this thing. And I think this move would be, in a way, to get the most assets back. And you don't really have to give up that much for Justin Fields. I think New England should be a team that buys low and makes this move.
Yeah, so I think New England is a very polarizing situation in the sense that gone are the Bill Belichick days, right? And now we are in the Gerard Mayo days, and Bill Belichick left that roster a mess. And now, you're depending on a rookie head coach with really no coaching experience to clean all that up with the lack thereof talent that's on the roster. And I get that point. I get that argument. Clearly, there's a need for a quarterback. They botched, Mac Jones' development. And now you're going to try to depend on another guy in your scenario, Justin Fields, to make sure you save his development. I can see the point. But I think for me, if I'm New England in a perfect world, I would draft a quarterback, not to play him, obviously, day one, right? But I will actually sign a veteran quarterback. Maybe I could get a Joe Flacco, and have him for a year and have that quarterback that I draft with the number 3 overall pick, let him sit and groom while I continue to build the infrastructure of my roster. That's what I would do if I'm New England in a perfect world. As far as Justin Fields is concerned, right? The team that comes to mind for me is the Steelers. It comes to mind a lot. Now, obviously, I don't think nothing is going to get done with Justin Fields until Kirk Cousins and Baker Mayfield signs. I think those are the 2 dominoes that has to fall in order for the process of Ryan Poles trading Justin Fields to get it accelerated, right? And I do think the Steelers are a very good organization for Justin Fields in these regards. They need a quarterback. It's obvious they need a quarterback. I don't think Kenny Pickett is it, and I don't think they really gave him a shot as far as the proper development. I think they feel that they could rewrite that wrong with the hire of Arthur Smith there, and I just don't see it. I think this franchise is vastly outdated. I think their coach is outdated. I think their ways of doing business is outdated. If I was a Steelers fan, I'd probably go in the middle of the street and chug me a beer and just think about life from a different perspective, because this is not it. I don't understand how you could be a Steelers fan and have your common senses right now, because they just don't do anything right. They're so old. They're so 1999. Clearly, it's not 1999 anymore. It's 2024. They need to get them a mobile quarterback who has upside. Yes, his development has been, shot, right? And that's why he doesn't have the big market right now. But you hear talks about them wanting to trade Deontay Johnson. That's been talks for like the last 2 or 3 years. You could package a deal with Deontay Johnson with a mid-round pick, and you send it over to Ryan Poles, and that's a deal to go. If you're the Bears, you get a wide receiver, you get some draft compensation for Justin Fields, and you build around Caleb Williams. I think it makes too much sense, and the fact that the Steelers won't even entertain, because I've seen the reports. They're not trying to entertain a veteran quarterback. They don't want nothing to do with Baker Mayfield. They don't want nothing to do with Kirk Cousins. They don't want nothing to do with Justin Fields. And I think it's all wrong. How many years do this team has to be in football purgatory, okay, doing just enough to get by in the regular season to keep a meaningless winning streak alive just to get rolled out of the daggone field because they have no shot to go up against Josh Allen, because they have no shot to go up against Patrick Mahomes, because they got no shot to even go up against Tua. Hallelujah. What are we doing here? Okay, no, they need a quarterback. Justin Fields is still a solid quarterback, and I think pairing him with that defense that could actually be good. That defense is legitimate. Think about Lamar Jackson and why he is good as far as being able to win games. They got a good defense, always had, right? That's what Justin Fields need, a defense to keep the game tight. In the fourth quarter, you go working magic. Make too much sense for me. So I'm going to go Justin Fields to the Steelers.
So here's my question for you. I agree that on paper, it's a really good fit, but you alluded to it yourself. Like Pittsburgh, they're so 1999. It kind of felt to me that based on what you were saying, you don't really see Pittsburgh as a team that would do this move. So even though we both agree this would be a pretty good move on paper, do you give this a realistic chance of actually happening?
That's a very good question. From a 1 to a 10, I think it will probably be 4. So it's kind of like halfway, but more so like, no, I don't think it's going to happen, And the reason why it's a 4 is because, Mike Tomlin did say he liked Justin Fields, and I think that's an intriguing option for him. But also you had the dynamics of them being very old and their ways of doing business is very old. But I think there's a time and place for everything. That owner came out, Art Rooney, and said that, and I quote, "I'm tired of, the same simulation of losing in the playoffs." That's the same thing that what's the dude from New England? The owner, Robert Kraft. That's the same thing he said about Bill Belichick before Bill Belichick was on the clock and eventually replaced with a succession plan. So if you are tired of losing, I don't think Kenny Pickett, with all due respect, is your answer. First of all, I don't even think Kenny Pickett should be the guy if you decide to not go for a veteran quarterback, even though you invested a pick on Kenny Pickett. I think that guy should be Mason Rudolph. He gave you a spark, and now he should be the guy that you roll with if you are not going to get a veteran in the room. So first of all, they making a mistake then. Okay, this is how hard-headed this franchise is and why I'm sick of this franchise and why every chance I get, I come at this franchise, not because I have ill intention, but because it's so obvious that they are in their own way of success. Number one, oh my God, my point is, drifting away. Oh, Mike Tomlin, right? So I also want this to happen for selfish reasons, right? Because we know my famous Mike Tomlin take is not popular at all, right? A lot of people think that I have this discernment for Mike Tomlin, which couldn't be farther from the case. I just don't believe that this guy has adapted to modern times and the league is passing him by. But somehow many people, media pundits and mainstream media, believes that this coach is still arguably the best coach in football. I do not see it. So I want this to happen so I can get a better understanding on if my take is 100% accurate. Okay, he is devoid of a quarterback, right? He doesn't have Big Ben no more. So the excuses are he doesn't have that franchise, quarterback like Lamar Jackson to the Ravens with John Harbaugh, right? He's missing that quarterback. Everything else is good. The defense is good. He could win a playoff game. All he needs is a quarterback. Okay, well, let me see him with Fields. Let me see him work his magic because he inherited Ben. Let's not forget that. He inherited that guy. Bill Cowher passed that daggone Big Ben like it was a daggone alley-oop. Okay, and he won a championship with that championship team with experience to win a championship. Now let's see him develop a quarterback because we have evidence so far. Kenny Pickett failed development, trash, right? I'm not gonna call him trash, but failed development. Mason Rudolph failed development. He was on your bench for 5 years before you put him in there last second of the daggone season to save your streak, right? Okay, let me see about Justin Fields. Can you fix that guy that clearly still has talent but hasn't been developed properly? You have the infrastructure. Can you fix that guy? That's why I want it to happen.
One last point on this. I do think that Fields' value being a lot lower than what the Bears really thought they might have been getting, I do think that does increase the Steelers' chances of possibly getting him. I wouldn't have seen the Steelers as a team that would be willing to give up like any valuable assets for Fields, but if the asking price is like a second or a third round pick, then maybe this deal might happen.
Let's go on to Kirk Cousins, Zach. How do we feel about Captain Kirk? Where should he go?
So the one thing about Kirk Cousins we know, Will, is that he's a mercenary, right? He started his career off in Washington, and then he takes a huge bag from Minnesota, and a lot of people are wondering what his next move is. And I think I have a good team for him to go to, and that's the Atlanta Falcons. I think this is a fit for me that makes a lot of sense. They brought in their new head coach, Raheem Morris. He brought with him from the Rams, Zach Robinson, a McVay disciple that runs that the offense, the McVay Shanahan offense. I think that's a perfect fit for Kirk Cousins. They have the weapons with Bijan Robinson, Drake London, Kyle Pitts. And also, like, if Atlanta doesn't sign Kirk Cousins, or if they decide not to sign a quarterback in free agency, then their move is probably going to be to draft a quarterback. They have the number 8 pick in the upcoming draft. And if I'm Atlanta, I think the better move and the better path to go down would be signing Kirk Cousins and drafting a wide receiver with that number 8 pick. I mean, besides Drake London, they don't really have much at that wide receiver position. So I think if you sign Kirk Cousins, if you draft Aroma Dunze or Malik Neighbors, I think that offense would be pretty prolific next year. Raheem Morris should help that defense build. I thought their defense got better as last year went on. And I think if you bring in Kirk Cousins to Atlanta, this is a team that has a very legit shot of winning the NFC South next year and maybe even competing in the NFC, because we don't really know behind San Francisco and Detroit, who are really the top contenders in this conference going to be. So I think Kirk Cousins to Atlanta is a move that makes a lot of sense. I think they'd be willing to pay him, and that's where I see him going.
Yeah, I agree. I'm going to go Kirk Cousins in Atlanta. I think it makes a lot of sense right now. We have to remember here, Kirk Cousins is a businessman, first things first, right? Him and his agent has done a good job finessing the league over the last couple of years as far as getting way more money than what they probably should have gotten. And I think when you talk about some of the, actions that we've seen the last couple of years and the money that he's gotten, we have to, expect that if the Atlanta Falcons do give him more money, then he will be a Falcon tonight. Okay, like think about it from this perspective, right? Achilles injury. Oh my gosh, should we pay this man coming off an injury? Guess what? He goes on Instagram, posts a video of him playing tennis. Okay, that's a calculation right there. That's a calculated move. There's nothing random about him doing that. Okay, no, it's like, listen, man, I want to show the league that I'm recovering well. Okay, and you should pay me my money. That's what that is. So although he loves playing in Minnesota, he's built a bond with his teammates. He's built a bond with that franchise. They go together like glue on a paper. Once that paper comes, I'm talking about moolah paper. I'm talking about money. He will go where the money is at. And I think the money's probably going to be in Atlanta. I think they clearly think he's a fit with their scheme, with Zach Robinson coming from that, McVay tree, and, Kevin O'Connell. So there's familiarity there. Okay, so it's not really too much of a big, I have to learn the playbook. It's going to be a few little tweak nuances. He's going to be good to go. And I think they do have weapons, right? You don't have nobody there that's Justin Jefferson now. Clearly, we're talking about the best wide receiver in the league, but you do have Kyle Pitts. You do have Drake London. You can, like you said, take another wide receiver, another weapon. Okay, and you have a guy in Kirk Cousins who's pretty good. Okay, he's not Drake, all right, but he's pretty good. And if you're the Vikings, right, and I'm pretty sure, we'll talk, the Vikings will come up here, I'm pretty sure. If you're the Vikings, Kirk Cousins has literally made $185 million from you for only 2 playoff appearances, 1 playoff win. Okay, no, it's time to move on. Okay, I understand the bond is cute. It's cute for TV. I get it. Love comes in all shapes and forms. But there's another quarterback that you can marry like that. Okay, and move on. I am not going to give this guy, and he's good, but I'm not going to give this guy a third fully guaranteed contract. I believe he wants guarantees and beyond 2025. I'm not doing that again. It's time for both parties to move on. I like the Falcons fit a lot.
So I think you bring up an interesting point about the Vikings, and I agree for the most part. Like, yeah, it's probably time for them to go their separate ways. It's important to remember that they have a relatively new GM, Kwesi Adolfo-Mensah. He's going into his third year, and I have my doubts that he would want to pay Kirk Cousins serious money. The one thing I would say, though, and my one small worry about this is Justin Jefferson. We know how these wide receivers get, right? When it comes to their feelings, they're known to be the diva position. And Justin Jefferson, he is going to be in for a historically big payday coming up very, very shortly. And he's made his feelings clear. Like, he wants Kirk Cousins back. That's his guy. I think it's super unfortunate, too, that Cousins got hurt right where he did this season, because he was having a great year for his standards, maybe a career best. I think Minnesota could have been a problem in the NFC if he would have stayed healthy. And I just wonder, like, I don't have a problem with them moving on from Kirk Cousins, but they have to have a concrete plan set in place for what they're going to do to get their next quarterback. My plan personally would be, right now they have the number 11 pick. I would do whatever I can to trade up in the draft, maybe with a team like New England, like I mentioned earlier, and go get a Drake May, or maybe go get a Jaden Daniels, like whoever Washington wouldn't take with that number 2 pick. And I do trust Kevin O'Connell as a quarterback developer to get the most out of whoever that guy is. But the Vikings have to be very careful to just stay on the same page as their star wide receiver.
Yeah. To your point about Justin Jefferson and trying to, attend to his feelings and what he wants, that's the gift and curse that comes with having a wide receiver as talented as Justin Jefferson is. And that goes back and forth. I always said before, not to really get off track here and sidetrack, but wide receivers, talented wide receivers, top 10 wide receivers, are a gift and a curse, because they make big plays for you, right? Clearly, they're crucial sometimes to the development of a quarterback, but then they want the ball, and they are like girls in the sense that they are loyal to their feelings. Okay, they are loyal. They don't care about winning half the time, right? They try to mask it as, oh, I want to win. I want to win. No, you want the ball. And I think when you talk about wide receivers, they are loyal to their feelings. And I do get that point. But that's something that the Vikings are going to have to map out. I like Justin Jefferson. I think he's the best wide receiver in the game. I'm a fan of his. So, that's the thin rope that they're going to have to cross. But I do think when it's all said and done, it's time to end this Kirk Cousins experiment. But I do have a quarterback for them. And we might as well get to this quarterback right now. I actually do have a quarterback for the Vikings, and that's Russell Wilson. I think for me, when you compare Kirk Cousins to Russell Wilson, I don't think it's fair to do right now, because Kirk Cousins to me in today's game is a little bit better than Russell Wilson, but I still think Russell Wilson could play. I believe that that's the cheaper, smarter play here from a financial standpoint, right? Yes, I do believe they should still take a quarterback, a young quarterback who they can groom and sit behind Russell Wilson. But I do think it makes sense, because the Broncos are going to eat his money. They're going to eat the dead cap. They're going to pay Russell Wilson his money. So you don't have to worry about that. And because of that, he's going to be able to take a vet minimum of $1 million. Okay. That's a real low risk move right there. Low risk right there. Maybe high reward, maybe low reward, whatever. But it's a low risk move that you can make. And you can pay Russell Wilson, who still is a solid quarterback in today's game. I don't think he's great, right? But he won a Super Bowl before. Now, I'm not saying that's going to happen here clearly, but I think that makes so much sense if you lose a guy like Kirk Cousins to pay Russell Wilson that money. And yeah, Zach, I pass it to you for Russell Wilson, man. Feel free to talk about the split with Denver as we talk about Russell Wilson right now and match him up with the team.
Absolutely. So just quickly on the Russ to the Vikings point, I think that option makes much more sense to them, for them, I should say, than Kirk Cousins. I agree. I would rather pay Russell Wilson $1 million than Kirk Cousins like $40 million. The only thing though, man, is like, if I'm Justin Jefferson, I don't love that plan. Like, I don't think Russell Wilson is the long-term fix or the long-term solution going forward. And that's why I would do whatever I could to trade up and draft a quarterback within the top 5. And if I'm Minnesota, that would be my number one goal right now. And you could do what you want with him. Maybe start him right away. I still think that situation with Jefferson, with Jordan Addison is pretty good. Or you could bring in a veteran you want to do. But I think your overall point on Russ is correct that even though there isn't going to be some robust market, like I don't think there are going to be a lot of teams like there probably will be for Kirk Cousins that are going to be lining up to get him. The fact that he's cheap and isn't going to cost a lot, I think that is going to be something that will appeal to some teams. I will bring up the team though that I think that makes the most sense for them to do. And I got to tell you, I think this team I'm going to bring up for Russell Wilson just makes too much sense. I think I could see it already. I think Russell Wilson is going to end up in Vegas and he is going to become a Raider because, man, first of all, Jimmy Garoppolo, he got suspended. He's going to be out the first 2 games, and I don't think the Raiders really want anything to do with him. Their new regime with Antonio Pierce and Tom Telesco, so they're going to be on the books for Jimmy Garoppolo, even though he's not really going to be playing. And Russell Wilson, like you mentioned, he's not going to cost you anything. So I think that would be something that appeals to them. And also, if you're the Raiders, like you need a big name. That's one thing that Mark Davis has really tried for at the quarterback position since the team has moved. I think that the opportunity to be in the AFC West and maybe even get some payback on Sean Payton and the Denver Broncos. That's one thing with Russ's statement yesterday. He, said thank you to all the Broncos fans, thank you to the organization, but he had nothing to say about Sean Payton, nothing to say about the GM George Patton. So I still think there's some bad blood there. I think that when you look at this Raider team, they're clearly in need of a quarterback. I like Aiden O'Connell, but I don't think he's any long-term solution based on the way he played last season. And Will, I just got to tell you, man, like this move has Raiders all over it to me. Like this is a move I could really see them making, getting the big name in. Maybe Russ is motivated to stick it to his former team. I see Russ in Vegas.
Now, here's my conundrum with the Raiders pick, right? Because everything that you said makes sense. And I, at one point, thought about going to Raiders. I always knew I wanted to go to the Vikings here, but that was a close second at one point. But then this conundrum came into play. Now, I understand that they have a need to fill at the quarterback position. Even their coach, Antonio Pierce, came out and said that, they'll be looking to add a quarterback, right? Now, who that quarterback is left up for you and me to find out in the future. Now, what we are trying to do is plan and match and help them out. And I get that. But I think when you look at that dynamic of Jimmy Garoppolo's situation, right? Because clearly they still got to pay him his money. And I think that's the same. That's kind of like the point that you're making from a financial point, which is the same financial aspect that I use for the Vikings take, all about finances and the money being correct. However, I think what the move for Jimmy Garoppolo showed the Raiders is that bridge stop program, it doesn't work for everybody. It didn't work for them. So would you want to go for another stop bridge quarterback again after what you did with Jimmy Garoppolo? Because Raiders the last year or so was that they learned from a previous mistake that they did before when they had a coach and Rich Bisaccia, and then they learned from the mistake by not bringing him back and going, star fishing for Josh McDaniels, and then they fired Josh McDaniels. It didn't work out, so they stopped star fishing and kept Pierce. I think they will learn the same lesson about stop bridge quarterbacks, where you just give a quarterback like Jimmy Garoppolo and say, manage my team and get me there. Clearly, it's not going to work. Will they do the same thing with a guy like Russell Wilson? I think is my conundrum.
So if you were the Raiders, what would your plan at quarterback be then?
I would try to trade for Fields, but I understand that the Luke Getsy situation.
Yeah, let me just comment on that quickly. If I'm Justin Fields, I want no interest in going to the Raiders. And if I'm Luke Getsy, I would want no interest in Justin Fields. I don't think those two parties want anything to do with each other. I think Getsy probably feels like Fields is a big reason why he got fired in Chicago. And I think Fields probably feels that Getsy is a big reason why things didn't work out for him either.
Yeah. I mean, look, I think there's a lot of stuff riding on that, right? Because I do agree with that point. It was a partnership that wasn't the best. It wasn't the healthiest, right? They had to, literally take a picture together to make it seem like everything was all right. Clearly, they were on two different pages. But at the same time, jobs are at stake here. And I think if it comes down to it, if you tell the Raiders the only choice you have other than sticking with O'Connell is going at the Fields, I think you got to make that move for Fields and try to hope and pray that Lugetzi and Fields could come to a compromise. Same thing with Fields. If you have no market, which clearly right now you don't have the biggest of markets, right? Let's say if everything pans out the way how it's going, Kirk Cousins to the Falcons, Russell Wilson to the Vikings. Okay, the Steelers say, you know what, I'm gonna stay pat. Where's your options coming from? So if you want to play like week one play and not be on somebody's bench or not be on Chicago's bench, then if it comes down to the Raiders, I'm pretty sure you will be up for going to the Raiders. You know, so that's the scenario that although it's a long shot, I won't rule it out like 100%.
Yeah, and I think with Pierce too, like when the Raiders decided to hire him as the full-time head coach, I would hope that before they made that decision, they kind of laid out with him like, bro, we got to have a clear-cut plan when it comes to the quarterback position. And the thing with Russell Wilson too is like he's pretty low risk. Like if you just give him a 1-year deal for not a lot of money, I think that is something that is appealing to these teams. And also, man, like if I'm Russ, I would want to go to Vegas. Like, you're with Sierra. That's a city a lot of the celebrities want to be in. You have the opportunity to stick it to Denver. I think these are kind of the things that, from Russ's perspective, he's gonna think about in terms of his next destination.
Let's go to one more quarterback, and then I got a couple running backs, and I got a couple other guys. I got 3 to 4 more guys. So let's go with Baker Mayfield to end the quarterback carousel here. I'm guessing Zach, Baker Mayfield, Bucs.
Yeah. My thought on this, Lil, and I gotta say it, man, and I think I brought this up right after. I think that it was the last time we spoke about the Bucs on this show, when they were getting ready to play the Lions in that playoff game. Is Jason Light? He's probably the best GM in the league, in my opinion. And the thing about the Buccaneers going into this offseason was you could legit make the argument that their 3 best players from last year, Baker Mayfield, Mike Evans, and Antoine Winfield, were all going to be free agents. And he already signed Mike Evans, so he don't have to worry about him. Antoine Winfield, they tagged him. It's looking like they're trying to do whatever they can to get him back and agree to a long-term deal. And if they could get Baker Mayfield back, then all 3 of those guys will be taken care of and they'll be back in Tampa. And in my opinion, that's a winning offseason. And I think this team deserves the opportunity to run it back based on the season they had last year and keep getting better. Now, it's a little bit of a bummer that they lost Dave Canales, their offensive coordinator, to become the new head coach of the Panthers. But Baker Mayfield, he's been searching for that team to call home for his long-term future, really, since he got drafted into the league. We know what happened in Cleveland. He went to the Panthers for a little bit. It didn't work out there. Went to the Rams for a cup of coffee, had a good moment, but they decided to let him go. I just think Tampa Bay is the fit for Baker Mayfield. He wants to be there. I think this makes sense for both parties. I see Baker staying in Tampa.
Yeah, I agree. I think he's going to stay in Tampa. I got to give a shout out to my guy, Jason Light. I agree 1000%. He's the best GM in the National Football League. The cap theatrics that he does every single year is beyond me, even from the point of, signing Tom Brady back in the day. And, after that season, we won the Super Bowl and bringing everybody back. I didn't think there was a way we could bring everybody back. We did. We was able to manage the cap situation then. And then once again, it's looking like he's going to be able to manage. Obviously, Baker Mayfield's the last piece of the puzzle to complete that, cap theatrics again. But I think it's on his way of doing that. And I do believe Jason Light will be able to do that because he has shown to be a master of, I won't even say manipulating the cap, but working around it and doing what he got to do. And that's why he's the best GM in sports. Even the Dave Canales hire was a great hire for offensive coordination perspective last year in the offseason. And clearly it paid dividends. He got a job. So, best GM in the league. As far as Baker Mayfield is concerned, look, I've never been the biggest Baker Mayfield guy on the show, clearly. But at the end of the day, I'm not a hater. The only reason why I won't like you is if you're not good. And before, Baker Mayfield was not good. He was too inconsistent. He have a good year, bad year. And I'm hoping that this will be the year where he strings 2 back-to-back seasons together of good football play, because last season was a good football season for Baker Mayfield standards. It was, for his standards, excellent season, right? Now, can we get that again for a second straight year? Because we didn't get that back-to-back in Cleveland. It was 1 year bad, then 1 year good, then 1 year bad, then he's out of there. No, back-to-back, consistency. Can we get that We'll see. I think they will be smart to bring him back and give it another go. I think paying a guy like Mike Evans opens the door for that. It's almost like you have to do it now because you paid Mike Evans. He needs somebody to throw him the football. He's making money. That you paid the guy. You got to give him a quarterback, Okay? That quarterback is already on the football field and already on your team, and that's Baker Mayfield. I think it's a match.
One last point on Light I'll bring up too. I've been very impressed with how quickly he's revamped his defense. They moved on from Shaq Barrett. Levante David, he has his questions about if he's going to be back next year or not, but they drafted Kalijah Kancey in the first round this past
That's
year.
another thing, Zach. Is
Yep.
their draft. Their drafting has always been good, for the last couple of years, to find dominant erupts like Chris Godwin out of Penn State, to find guys like Anton Winfield Jr.
Even
out of Minnesota.
the kid, the receiver Trey Palmer, right? He
Trey
really came
Palmer,
on
that's
the end.
another guy. He came on last year for sure.
Yeah. Kalijah Kancey and Yaya Diaby, two names to really look out for, but we're on the same page there. This is a really good team.
Let's move away from quarterbacks real quickly here. Let's talk about Saquon Barkley because he's going to be a free agent. The Giants opted to not tag him. Zach, how do we feel about Saquon Barkley?
Yeah, well, so I have a little bit of an unpopular opinion on this. I think he's going to be back with the Giants this offseason, and here's my rationale. Normally, I'm not in the boat of if you're trying to win a Super Bowl, pay whatever you can and give the running back top dollar. And I think the Giants are in a unique spot, and I'm curious what you think of this too, because I think it's inevitable that this is going to be Daniel Jones's last season as the Giants quarterback. I think he's going to be cut this time next year. And the Giants, I think they need to draft a quarterback in this year's draft. And when you're doing that, we know the deal, right? You have to surround him with the best weapons possible and give him as favorable as a chance and put him in a good situation to win. And I think if you're a team like the Giants, who we know, like no matter who their quarterback is, they're not winning a Super Bowl this upcoming year. That's not going to happen. And I think that they need to bring back Saquon Barkley to put whoever their quarterback of the future is in a position to succeed. And from Saquon's perspective, I think deep down he wants to stay. I think he enjoys being the face of a team in New York, a huge market. I think he wants to be a Giant for life. This is a team that drafted him with the number 2 overall pick. And I think that situation is very appealing to him. Now, if a team like the Texans or the Chargers, like those are the two teams a lot of people have mentioned, and they're in much better, more favorable situations to win than the Giants. If they blow him out and give him a contract he can't refuse, then yeah, maybe he'll leave. But I do think if I'm the Giants, I would do whatever I can to bring this guy back. He's the face of the franchise. I think he enjoys that. I think their owner too, John Mara, is a big fan of his. We know how much money he paid Daniel Jones. And that's my other thing, Will, is like, we had a lot of conversations about the Giants and what they should do with Daniel Jones at this time last offseason. I think it would be a bad look to pay as much money as they did for Daniel Jones, and then you're going to let Saquon Barkley, the face of your franchise, the guy that we all knew back last year when they were winning playoff games against the Vikings, like as good as Jones was, we all agreed that Barkley was really the straw that stirred the drink. If I were the Giants, I would do whatever I could to take care of my face of the franchise and bring him back to New York and make him a Giant for life.
Yeah, the Giants are in a bit of a limbo. Okay, they are. And, they made a lot of mistakes that it's really hard to penalize them for everything because they're awesome that we do. Drafting Saquon at that high of a pick is one of those. Maybe you could argue the Daniel Jones pick, but they was in a position last year, or getting my facts mixed up a little bit.
Yeah,
not last year, but the year before, the season before, right? Because I'm thinking last year is this current season, even though it's this year. But I'm talking about 2 seasons ago where they won the playoff game, and then we all knew, they won the playoff game against the Vikings. So we all knew that either both or somebody was going to get paid. Okay. And then they had that off season with the big questions. They decided to bring Daniel Jones back and pay him his money. That was overseeding his value. And then they obviously tagged Saquon Barkley. So they always had these tough questions, right? And there's a report out right now, I'm not sure how accurate it is, by Rich Eisen, that the Giants are done with Daniel Jones. Now, I'm not sure what to believe there.
I think he's right.
Maybe they are. A lot of injuries. They didn't help him with his development as well. One of the worst offensive lines in football throughout the year. That's the same offensive line that's blocking for Saquon Barkley as well. And I think for me, just to merge kind of the point that I left behind along with where we are right now, so I don't get sidetracked, is that I do think that well, not my opinion. I watched the Michael K show before I got on the air, and they was talking about a potential Russell Wilson signing, where if they are done with Daniel Jones, they would sign Russell Wilson to the vet minimum and then have him on the roster for a year until they cut, Daniel Jones. And I think that's an option, But as far as Saquon Barkley is concerned, I do kind of agree in the sense that I do think he will end up in New York because I do believe that he wants to retire a Giant. I think that point where it was in the off season, or we was talking about running backs and how they wasn't getting paid, and then he said he wasn't going to show up. Then he showed up the next day. I think that's his loyalty to the Giants franchise in a nutshell, and I think he will continue to, maintain that loyalty to a franchise that kind of had done him wrong. Whatever we want to say about the value of running backs, he hasn't been taken care of. This is a 7th year entering the open market, and that's kind of like how these things roll with running backs. It's the same cycle. You're on your rookie deal, right? Your 4 years on your rookie deal. We pick up your 5th year option, if that. Then we tag you, and then we send you to the open market. Then we do this process again. And I think that he's within that process. So I think for him, and why I'm going to bring this team up, I think it makes sense for his career. Go win a championship, bro. You're not getting paid. You're not. Okay. With all due respect, you're not going to get the money that you think you're valued at because you are in a NFL that doesn't value the running back position. So what he should do, and what Saquon, if you ever watched the show, what you should do is go chase a championship and play with a elite quarterback, not a quarterback that the team is saying, I'm through with him. No, go play with a star like CJ Stroud. I think the Texans make a lot of sense because clearly, they actually got a decent running game with who they had, right? You got that kid from Buffalo. Damn, name blanking on
Devin
me.
Singletary.
Devin Singletary. He had a very good year. Buffalo couldn't get those years out of him, and he did it in 1 year. Oh, so they building something there clearly with C.J. Stroud and Tank Dell and Nico Collins. Get you Saquon Barkley. You have the money to pay him. C.J. Stroud is not expensive right now, so you're gonna have to bring out the checkbook in the future. We might as well go and try to win a championship right now. Now, yes, I think the Texans could go out there and compete for a championship. I really do feel that they could compete for a Super Bowl. Why not sign Saquon Barkley and add more talent to the roster? I like that move the best.
Yeah, I think it really is going to come down to kind of like you've been saying, like, what does he really want? And I'd be fascinated, like, again, if I'm the Giants, I would actually be pretty willing to give him some good money because I know that I'm going to be moving on from Daniel Jones pretty soon. And I'm going to be at least trying to draft a rookie quarterback, and I want to put him in a position to succeed. So you would have to pay up to keep him. But I'm also wondering, like, Houston, I know they have Stroud on the rookie deal, but at the same time, though, like, we know paying, if you're trying to win a Super Bowl, if your number one goal is winning a championship, paying a running back big time money isn't really the blueprint for that. We haven't really seen an example of that working, even with a team like San Francisco, who had an elite roster and they went all in for McCaffrey, and they still couldn't get the job done and win that championship. I'm just wondering, like, what would Saquon want? If the Texans offer him less money than the Giants, would that be enough for him to still go and move on?
I think that's a fair question. We got 3 more guys, Zach, to close here. Let's go with Austin Eckler, right?
Hmm.
I got a team for Austin Eckler, right? Now, last year was horrendous. Who we kidding? Okay. A lot of it probably had to do with the ankle injury that he had. He had like a high ankle sprain, and when he came back, he was straight garbage. And before that, he was one of the best versatile backs in the league. Could catch out of the backfield, could catch down the field. Sometimes I was watching old highlights of him with Phillip Rivers. I'm like, oh my God, is this the same Eckler that I was heckling at last year? Crazy, right? How things change in the NFL, especially being a running back, right? But I think this team that I'm gonna go with, which is Chicago, makes sense for me because you're gonna usher in, well, allegedly, right? Either way, whether you usher in a new quarterback in Caleb Williams, a rookie quarterback, or whether you try to, attack the development of Justin Fields, you're going to need a quarterback to develop to his full potential. And having a guy like Austin Eckler, a guy that, a quarterback can really make a living off the checkdowns, just getting him the ball and allowing his versatility to be put on full display, I think it makes sense. They running back situation is a little bit spotty for me. You got Johnson, and you also have the other dude, Khalil Herbert. They didn't really have the best running game last year. That didn't really help Fields out, like how they could have, when they had David Montgomery and Khalil Herbert. So I think they need to attack the running back position as well. That's on the to-do list for Ryan Poles. And I think it starts with Austin Eckler. I think that would be a good, piece for a quarterback, especially with his ability to catch the ball out of the backfield and having a quarterback make a living off the check down. So I'm going to go Austin Eckler, Chicago.
Yeah, Lil, it's funny. Like, it just goes to show you kind of how much Austin Eckler's fallen off, because I didn't really have a team ready for him. Like, I knew he was a free agent, but I kind of forgot he's going to be out there. Now, I think what you said about Chicago makes a lot of sense. Just to mix it up, though, I'll go Philadelphia. DeAndre Swift is a free agent. They have a decision to make on him. I think he fits their offense playing with Jalen Hurts. But honestly, Lil, like, again, like I didn't really think of Austin Eckler as like, this is a big time free agent. Like, I'm trying to wonder where he's going to go. I think his best days are behind him. It's unfortunate what happened to him injury wise, but he has a lot to prove, and maybe that'll be the best for him.
This is for the fantasy people, man. We got to talk about Austin Eckler for fantasy, right? If we still drafting that guy, that was the worst investment last year in fantasy. It cost me my championship. Screw you, Eckler. But anyway, let's go to a defensive player here, who I think is a very good elite player in this game, is really building his equity of being one of the top corners in the league, and that's L'Jarius Sneed, who got the non-exclusive tag, which means he can negotiate with other teams. Zach, that tag was not a tag that we seen a lot until last year with Lamar Jackson, and now it's becoming a frequent thing now. Yeah. And me personally, if I could give a team, I would go with the Lions. I think they are in need of a cornerback. Last year they brought to the playoffs and they got really far, could have made the Super Bowl with a very horrendous pass defense. Mike Evans had a field day. Puka Nacua had a field day.
You remember Brandon Ayuk in the championship.
Yeah, the field day. And don't get me wrong, all those are talented receivers, but they had their career days against the Lions secondary. CeeDee Lamb tossed them for almost 300 yards. It was like 200 plus yards.
That
right?
one long one too, right? He had like an 80-yarder.
They need a cornerback, and I think L'Jarius Sneed has proven that he's versatile. He can play man, he can play outside, in the slot as well. And I think that would be a good building foundation to build your defense and try to get your defense to be compatible with your high-flying offense. So I'm going to go L'Jarius Sneed with the Lions.
Yeah, well, that's another one I can't really argue with. It makes a ton of sense to me. The one thing I would say, though, that I'm fascinated by is the Lions did pay a corner last offseason, Cortland Sutton, or not Cam Sutton, I should say.
Cam Sutton.
From Pittsburgh. I do wonder if that impacts their decision, but there's no doubt, like, this is a team that needs to upgrade their secondary in the biggest way possible. That was a big part of their downfall last year. I'll change it up here too, though, and I'm actually going to go the same team I mentioned for Eckler. I'm going to go Philly. This is a team that I think needs secondary help desperately. And if I'm Howie Roseman, and this kind of started kind of not in the way you thought, with Jason Kelce retiring, that's obviously a huge loss. But I think the Eagles need a little bit of a culture shakeup. There was just something clearly wrong that happened with that team last year in the way that things ended, especially in that locker room. And if I'm Howie Roseman, I would really start focusing on, okay, like Jalen Hurts, whether we like it or not, he's the guy we paid and he's the future of this franchise. I need guys in that locker room that are going to go with him, and he has to be the leader. Like, there were some questions about, like, towards the end of last year too, which I was really surprised by, is like, is everyone in that locker room really adopting and following Jalen Hurts' lead? And it's interesting because there were so many guys in that locker room, like a Jason Kelce, like a Lane Johnson, like even a Darius Slay, that are older veteran players. And I could see why maybe you would have some trouble following in the footsteps of a guy that's really good in Hurts, but a guy that's also really young, and maybe his ways and methods of leadership isn't really suited for that. Like, you need guys that are going to ride with him. And I think signing L'Jarius Sneed would be a big step forward towards that. And of course, like, this team secondary was pitiful last year. If I'm them, I'm doing whatever I can to move on from James Bradbury. I would even highly consider trading Darius Slay. I still think he could play a little bit, but I don't need a captain of my team going on social media after losses talking about how good he played, even though the team came up short. That's just not about it. I would do whatever I can to move on from him, and I think signing L'Jarius Sneed would be the best way to start there.
Yeah, I mean, the Eagles, the falling off of their defense is just crazy. It's like a one-hit wonder. Zach, I have one more, but I'm gonna do it a little bit different here, right? I'm gonna end off here differently. I'm gonna allow you to pick yours, your player, and your team, and I'm gonna pick my last player in my team. That cool?
Yeah, sounds
I'm
good.
gonna go ahead and I'm gonna pick Calvin Ridley because I just found out before I got on the air that he's more than likely going to be a free agent, which makes sense in a sense because although I still think he got game, think he was heavily underutilized in Jacksonville. I do believe that if they were to sign him, that the Falcons will have a pick. I think the second or third round pick for from the Jaguars from that trade. So clearly, there's a investment tied into bringing a guy like Calvin Ridley back, which is why they probably going to allow him to, walk. And I think automatically, looking at the wide receiver market off the top of my head, he will probably be number one off the top of my head of guys that you could sign to give your quarterback some help. And one team that we talked about so far in the show that I'm glad that I saved that team for anything, which is right now for this wide receiver. They are in dire need of talent, and that's New England. They need talent, bro. Bill Belichick left a mess. We don't know who their quarterback is. We don't know where they're going with the quarterback, but wherever they go and whoever they go to, he's going to need somebody to throw the football to. Okay, Kendrick Bourne is probably out of here. I mean, who are you throwing the ball to? Devontae Parker? I believe he's a free agent himself. Okay, that's Bill Belichick calling me. Yeah, Bill Belichick, I know you got time on your hands to watch this show because you ain't coaching, but I do think that New England needs a wide receiver desperately. They need talent. They need reinforcements. Calvin really could be that guy. I still think he got game. One of the best route runners in the game. Okay. Yes, that's my team and that's my player.
Yeah, so in terms of the best receiver on the market, I would probably agree with you. Him or Hollywood Brown are probably the two guys like right at that top echelon. I'm just wondering, man, like if I'm New England, I agree. Whoever your quarterback is, you need to surround them with a lot better talent than Bill Belichick did. But is it really worth paying him his market? Like, I just don't. I have some doubts if like that is going to be worth it in the end, if that's going to turn out to be a worthwhile investment. And it just goes to show you, like, that might just be a move the Patriots are forced to make because that's how badly Belichick left it.
Remember, they lost out on D-Hop last year where they had an opportunity to bring in D-Hop. We all thought D-Hop was going to be a Patriot, and the Titans jumped in. They didn't want to pay D-Hop the money. The Titans did, and the Titans pretty much got good investment. D-Hop was very productive last year. I don't think they should make the same mistake. I think they should go after a guy like Calvin Ridley.
Mm-hmm. What do you think? Fields and Ridley in New England, man. I think that's a good place to start if I'm Gerard Mayo. I'm gonna go with the guy I choose though, Will, is one of the guys in our picture that I'm surprised we haven't hit on yet. I think we got to talk about Chris Jones, right? I think he is one of the biggest dominoes to fall in this offseason. And Will, I'm sure you heard this news the other day, but the league announced that the salary cap for 2024, it's going to be $255.4 million. And that is a record increase of 306 million or 30.6 million from last year's cap. So the cap went up 30.6 mil. And I'm not going to lie to you, Will, like when I saw that news, the first question I thought of is there going to be any shot Kansas City could keep both Chris Jones and L'Jarius Sneed? Is there any caps theatrics that Brent Veach could work out to try to allure both guys in? And I think what makes it a little complicated is both Chris Jones and L'Jarius Sneed throughout this whole process, all of their decisions have been financially based, and that's their right. Like if I was in their shoes, I would want as much money as I possibly could also. But at the same time, it's like man, you have the opportunity to be a part of the first team in the history of the NFL to win 3 straight Super Bowls next year. How good of a situation is that to maybe take possibly like just a little bit of a discount and maybe go back? I'm just wondering, with that salary cap move increasing by that much money, did that improve Kansas City's chances of keeping both guys? I'm sure one of them is going to be back. They'll make one of them a priority. I'm still going back and forth in my mind. If I was in Brett Veach's shoes between Jones and Snead, like which guy would I prioritize keeping more? My answer, I keep on going back and forth with this. I probably would say Snead, just because having that premium corner and having the best cornerback duo in the league is something that just not a lot of other teams have. But we know Chris Jones, just how impactful of a player he is. So I'm just curious to see what Kansas City's plan is with both these guys hitting the open market for the defending Super Bowl champs.
Yeah, that's a very good point. The reason why I didn't bring up Chris Jones to begin with, that probably would have been the starter. I think he's better than all these guys that we covered so far, to be honest with you. Is because I didn't think there was no realistic chance that he leaves Kansas City. But you bringing it up and them having to choose between Snead and Chris Jones is a very, a very hard question for them, right? Because they are two impactful players, what they do on the defensive side of the ball. But to answer that question of if I had to choose before I give a team here between keeping either one of those players, I'm sorry, I'm keeping Jones. I really am, because his impact, like I said, everybody talk about Patrick Mahomes because he's the quarterback. We live in a quarterback-driven league. Clearly, without Patrick Mahomes, they won't be this far either. But I think I may get a lot of people may Lil, you lost credibility by saying this. I don't care. Chris Jones is equally as beneficial and important to the team than Patrick Mahomes. Equally to me. Especially when you look, because remember, Patrick Mahomes can't play defense. Can't play defense. He's a quarterback. He plays one position. But if you divide it where, all right, you talk about defense specifically, oh yeah, he's the best player on that side of the ball, clearly. I mean, the plays that he made in the Super Bowl, the plays that he made in the playoffs, even down to last year, impactful plays that don't even show up on the stat sheet. Hitting the quarterback before the quarterback throws the ball, wide open receiver, he stopped that play. Oh my, it's not even a question. Now I understand Snead is a very good cornerback. He's talented, and whoever gets him, if it's not Kansas City, gonna get a hell of a player. But Chris Jones, he's the MVP of that defense, bro. He's the Kelsey Mahomes to that defense. They need to find a way to bring him back. He goes anywhere, he's instantly going to make the team that pays him or whatever a championship level team, like a contender. He's that impactful on that side of the ball. And the team that I would match him with, if it's not Kansas City, because they'd be an idiot to let him go, will be the Texans.
Let me say though, like, I don't think it's idiotic to say, okay, it's a tough choice, but we're going to take Snead, because Jones is 29 years old, and this would be his third big contract, and you don't want that to age poorly. Like, for the first year or two of that deal, maybe it's obviously he's still a great player, like that's going to help you, but I wouldn't crush them if they decided to choose Snead over him. You know what I mean?
I mean, you still got one good corner on the other side, right? And McDuffie. So you can replace that cornerback. And clearly, when you look at the defensive lineman, he's clearly the MVP of that. Like, his impact alone, like I said, that don't even show up on the stat sheet of guys getting freed open, because there's so much attention to detail on where Chris Jones is. I mean, I could be here all day with his impact. So although he is, the age factor is a thing, he's still got a lot of game left. And I think if he goes somewhere else and gets his money, whoever's signing this guy is going to get a lot of gain from this guy, Chris Jones, and a lot of impact. And I think the Texans make sense for me, to close out. They're building something, clearly. They need to go all in. They got money to spend. You got a cheap quarterback right now, CJ Stroud. You need to go all in and try to win a championship, to get a championship out of his rookie deal before you pay him. And, that defensive side of the ball is growing. You got D'Amico Ryans. I would love to see him on a D'Amico Ryans-led defense. They definitely played well stopping the running game. They secondary is a little bit spotty, but they did a very good job stopping the run. I think that would be a big plus adding a guy like Chris Jones. I think it makes sense.
Damn, Saquon Barkley and Chris Jones in one offseason would be something.
That would be something. They will win the offseason by those two moves alone. All right, Zach. that wraps up this segment. We're going to go to halftime here, and we'll be back in 2.5 minutes. We're going to move into the NBA, so make sure you keep it locked right now.
Please like and subscribe for all the up-to-date content. You've been slinging shows left and right, slinging content left and right. Please don't miss anything. If you do, like, subscribe, leave a comment, or leave a question, something you may want to answer, something you may have. All ideas are great ideas. Nothing's a dumb question.